Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Mike Coffman, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2015, in Colorado Springs, the state of Colorado, a former Marine, combat veteran, Noel Harder, was suffering from depression and had suicidal ideation, was diagnosed with that from going and visiting a CBOC veterans clinic in Colorado Springs. He was given a fairly powerful antidepressant that I think on the direction said that it required fairly close monitoring. He was not scheduled for another visit. He subsequently took his own life. And in looking into that situation, it was very hard to get answers from the VA because they didn't want to admit that they'd made a mistake. In fact, it was a physician's assistant, not even a physician, that made that, that prescribed that particular very powerful drug, psychotropic drug, antidepressant drug. And in looking to that situation and having other veterans complain to me, it seems that VA is in a way part of the problem by having a drug-centric modality of treatment where it is a drug to sort of stabilize them, but then it's a drug to help them, another drug to help them go to bed at night, then it's another drug to help them get up in the morning, and not too far along, they've given a cocktail of drugs. That's very dangerous. And we even had a situation that came to the attention of this committee where a veteran moved, couldn't quite get his prescriptions redone, was then going through fairly dramatic withdrawals and took his own life there. And so I have a concern of that, and Dr. Franklin and Mr. Fisher, maybe you could address my concern.
Absolutely. We'll start with Mr. Fisher.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I can go ahead and start. When you review the inside the VA, whether it's in the literature or just inside our system, people who are on psychotropic medication are absolutely at increased risk, particularly as those medications, as they increase. And so, for example, when they're on 2 and 3 of them at the same time. And so it is a great concern to us inside the VA, and I would offer that we get to a place where we're looking at the no kidding on the data on that. So how many how much are we prescribing over what period of time, and do we have goals around that in such a way that it is not used as our main effort when there could be other methods used, like talk therapy, like community-based interventions, in support structure, so that it's used when it needs to be used, but it's not necessarily the first and the go-to and or only treatment method. And when it is used, it absolutely needs to be used in a safe and protected way where strong protocols are in place, aftercare models where they are monitored closely. And so it's tragic to me to hear about this Noel and others that you mentioned in the state of Colorado, and we'll work on this and make sure that we're pulling the thread in a better way so that we have data to support medication rates coming down over time, just as they have in other fields. I don't know if you have something to add to that, Mr. Fisher, or...
The only thing I would add to that is exactly what you said about talk therapy or what we do at vet centers, and that is that ability to go out, create that individual relationship, an individualized treatment plan, and really set, for us, readjustment is about setting a goal, helping that individual create a support structure around that goal to accomplish that goal, and then identify another one and just do it over and over and over again in concert or collaboration with our medical center counterparts.
Okay, well, the Harder family has lost a son, and so I would suggest that the VA take a look at that, and instead of trying not to hold anybody accountable for failures, to get down to the bottom of it and try to make best effort away from a drug-centric treatment model.
I agree with you. Urgency and accountability, yes, sir.
Okay. Just final point that one thing on these other than honorable discharges was a terrible mistake for the United States Army when we were drawing down from Iraq and Afghanistan. to take combat veterans that had trouble adjusting from a combat environment to a peacetime environment, and for minor infractions, discharging them with no access to VA care, to include mental health care. And I was able to pass legislation out of this committee to mandate that the VA provide mental health care to those with other than honorable discharge. And I can tell you, as the subcommittee chairman for military personnel in the House Armed Services Committee, I'm working not only to review those discharges, but to make sure that our military never, ever, ever does that again in a drawdown. I yield back.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to recognize the gentlewoman from New Hampshire, Ms. Custer, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I also want to thank Mr. Coffman for that line of questioning and for his bill that I've signed on to with Mr. O'Rourke on VA overprescribing practices as they're related to suicide. I